So today's session we will be seeing about fuzzy logic applications and SOM and special networks. Okay, so this is going to be a continuation of the previous session. So first, when we are going into fuzzy logic applications, in fuzzy logic applications we will be discussing about two main applications. Okay, one about the speed control of DC motor and the other one is about the water level controller. Then we will be discussing some special networks in neural, some 5 to 6 networks with their architecture and algorithm we will be discussing. Okay, so first we'll go into fuzzy logic applications. The first one is water level controller. So let me think of a controller which is going to be designed with fuzzy logic. Let us take a overhead water controller. Okay, so let us assume this is going to be the overhead tank and this is the reservoir from where the water is pumped in. Okay, so these both are connected together and we also have a controller to help us to implement fuzzy logic. Okay, so we can use any algorithm whichever is favorable for that situation. Now this controller is capable of taking inputs. This inputs can be a set point or any level of the water which we can give via input device, any keyboard or any mobile or anything like that. So the set point can be set through the controller, right? Now this is the overhead tank. Now we are going to control the water level in this overhead tank. Now this level is going to be sensed by the ultrasonic sensor and this will be fed to the controller here. Now this controller will compare the level here with the set point, okay, and it will operate the valves here. There are two valves, all right. Now these two valves are operated by the controller and the pump. The pump is connected here, right? Now if the water level is whatever we had given as the set point, then the valve should be closed. This is the valve, right? We have the two valves. The valves should be closed. Now, if the water level is less than the set point, then the water level should be open. This is our strategy. Now, for this, we are going to take some inputs. We are going to assign some outputs. And based on the inputs and outputs, we are going to give the rule base. Now, this rule base should also be framed based on the inputs. Okay. Now, let us assume two inputs. The two inputs, let me take the two inputs, one as the water level, the other one as the error rate. Now coming to this diagram, we know what we are going to do in the fuzzy logic controller. In the last session we had seen, right? Fuzzification interface, defuzzification interface, rule based and the decision making logic. Okay. Now here is the input what we are going to give and here is the output what we are going to get. Both the inputs and outputs are going to be the crisp quantity. Now these crisp quantities are converted into fuzzy quantity into the fuzzy logic controller and the rules have been decided. Okay, so now this is the overall diagram. This is the fuzzy logic controller and the water tank. Now from the sensor the input is given, the crisp value is given to the fuzzification, and from the defuzzification after we get the crisp value, this is being fed back to the level sensor. This is the entire process of the fuzzy logic controller. Okay, now the inputs what we are taking is water level and error rate. See, we can take how many other inputs. So as many inputs you take, the system will be more exact. The output will be more exact. Okay, and we are taking the output as valve position. So this also you can take two or more outputs based upon our requirement, right? Now the first thing we are identifying, step one, we are identifying the input and output variables. So the input, two inputs we have given and the outputs valve position we are taking, right? Now the second step is going to be assigning an appropriate membership function and perform fuzzification process. Now assuming or assigning the membership function, the shape of the membership function can be triangular, Gaussian, trapezoidal, anything, right? But the interval what we are going to take should be between 0 to 1 or from -1 to 1. This is the entire logic. Now see here, the first input is water level. Now for water level, we had given the membership function. We had taken three membership function, minimum, normal and maximum. Now if you see here, the entire interval is between 0 to 1. All right. So we are breaking the 0 to 1 into three intervals. minimum, normal and maximum, right? Now, the normal membership function we have taken as a triangular membership function, and minimum and maximum membership function we are taking it as a trapezoidal. Okay, now all the three can be taken as trapezoidal or all the three can be taken as triangular, however. But we generally don't go in for Gaussian. We generally prefer for triangular or trapezoidal, right? Now for water level, we are taking three: minimum, normal and maximum. Now going to the second input. Second input is going to be the error rate. Now for error rate, again, we are taking three membership function. The three membership functions are negative, medium, positive, right? So here again, you check the interval, it is from 0 to 1. So it should be classified properly between this three interval, right? Now we are going to give the membership function for the output variable also. We have taken only one output variable here, that is the val position. For val position, again, membership function is assumed. So here, this is for the val position, for the output variable, right? For the output variable, I had taken 5 membership function. All the 5, I had taken it to be triangular. Okay, you can take all the 5 to be trapezoidal or however it is. Now, the 5 membership function, what we're taking is open fast, open slow, no change, close slow, close fast. Okay, open fast, open slow, no change, close slow and close fast. These are the 5 membership function. So now we have to map the input variables and output variables with respect to the rules. Okay, now we have taken first input 3, second input 3, right, and 5 for the output. So 2 inputs, 3 cross 3. So I have to give 9 rules for the database. Okay, now going into the rules, see, the rules can be mentioned in a table like this called as a fuzzy associative memory table, FAM table, okay, which will easily represent the inputs and the outputs. Now the same is mentioned as the rules, 9 rules above. First we will discuss about the FAM table. Say if water level is minimum and the error rate is negative. So what does it mean? The level of the water is very, very less as compared to the set point. So what should happen? The valve should be open very fast to fill up the water, right? So we are giving open fast. Open fast. Next, if water level is normal and error rate is negative. So one condition is normal, the other one is going in negative. So again, I have to open the valve, but no need to be fast, it can be slow. So the rule what I give is open slow. Okay. Now this rule is purely dependent upon the user who is designing the function. So it can be the reverse also, right? The next one, the third rule, if water level is maximum and error rate is negative. So what is happening? Water level is maximum, it has already attained the set point and the error rate is going to be negative. So this and that gets balanced, right? So no need to open the valve at all, no change. So likewise, we will be giving all the 9 rules. Say check the other rules. If the water level is minimum and the error rate is medium, open slow. The valve should be opened in slow push. Water level is normal and error rate is medium, no change. Okay. Same way if water level is maximum and error rate is medium, close slow. So likewise, you can give all the rules. The same rules are specified in if then. Okay, see if water level is minimum and error rate is negative, then valve position is open fast. Rule 2, if water level is normal and error rate is negative, then valve position should be open slow. So likewise, all the 9 rules from the FAM table is mentioned here. Okay, so when you're writing the answers, the FAM table is also important. The rules are also important. Rules are nothing but the implication from the FAM table. Okay. So the last 3 rules, if water level is minimum and error rate is positive, then valve position should be no change. Then if water level is normal and error rate is positive, then valve should close slowly. If water level is maximum and error rate is positive, then close fast, right? So this is the FAM table, what is going to be fed in this is the rule base, what is going to be fed here. Now, based on this rule, the defalsification process will occur after the integration, after the output has been obtained, and this will be fed back to the level sensor for correction of the network. Okay, this is with respect to water level controller. Next, we are controlling the speed with the fuzzy speed of a DC motor with the fuzzy logic controller. Now check, we know the speed, we can control it by the voltage, right? Now, when we are using a fuzzy logic controller, we are taking again two input membership functions. Instead of a PID controller, we are going to give a fuzzy logic controller. Okay, so in the fuzzy logic controller, I told you two inputs, error and change in error. Change in error is rate of change of error. Okay, and output we are going to take it as a speed. Right, now the same process of falsification and defalsification occurs with the given rules, right? Now step 1, identifying the input and output variables. Input 1 is error and input 2 is change in error. Okay, speed is the output variable what we are going to control. Now first we are going to assign membership functions for both the inputs and then assign membership function for the output. Okay, now first for input 1, for error, we are going to take 3 membership functions: negative big, 0, positive big. Same way for input 2, error rate, error rate is nothing but change in error, so DE by DP. We are assuming again 3 membership functions: negative big, 0, positive big. It can be the same quantities, but you have to map in the interval between 0 to 1. That is the thing. Okay, and the output I have taken here 5 again, 5 membership function: negative big, negative small, 0, positive small, and positive big. Now I have to map this 3 membership functions of input 1 and 3 membership functions of input 2 with the 5 membership functions of the output variable. So 3 cross 3 again 9 rules I have to give. Say if you're going to take 5 membership functions in input 1 and 5 membership functions in input 2. So 5 cross 5 you have to give 25 rules. Based on the membership functions, the number of rules will change. Okay. So again we are going to frame the rules. Say if the error is negative big, error rate is negative big, then the speed should be negative big. Okay, if error is 0 and error rate is negative big, the speed should be negative small. If error is positive big and error rate is negative big, the speed should be 0. So likewise, all the 9 rules are framed. The same 9 rules are put in the if then value here. Okay, you see the last 3 rules. If the error is negative big and the error rate is positive big, then the speed should be 0. So this and this are getting cancelled. If the error is 0 and the error rate is positive big, then the speed is positive small. Okay, the last one, if the error is positive big and the error rate is positive big, then the speed should be positive big. So this is how you design the fuzzy logic controller. Okay, the next one, we will go into non-linear fuzzy control system. So in non-linear fuzzy control system, see, till now we were seeing 2 examples: the speed control of DC motor and one more is the water level controller, right? Now these both are linearly controlling device. When I am going into for non-linear controlling device, we are going to take an example of inverted pendulum. Okay, now here also the fuzzy logic controller gives a better output rather than a PID controller. Okay, so example for a non-linear fuzzy control system is inverted pendulum control. The problem of inverted pendulum is a classical fuzzy control problem. Okay, now again the procedure is the same. We will take 2 inputs and we will take outputs. Okay, we will map this both together and then we will give the rules. Okay, the problem is to adjust a motor to balance the inverted pendulum. Now see, we are adjusting a motor such that the pendulum will stand in the reverse position. Okay, so it comprises 2 fuzzy state variables. We are going to take 2 variables, x1 and x2, theta and d theta and rate of change of error. Okay, theta is going to be the angle which the pendulum makes with the vertical position. Okay, and d theta is going to be the rate of change of that error, right? It comprises of two fuzzy state variables, theta, variable x1, which the pendulum shaft makes with the vertical and the angular velocity. So d theta is represented by del theta, that is the variable x2. Now, if theta is equal to 0, then the shaft is in vertical position. Now, check the diagram in the next slide. See, this is the inverted pendulum what we are going to take. Okay. Now, this is the vertical shaft and this is the pendulum. Now, the angle made by the pendulum with the vertical shaft is denoted as theta. And this theta is taken as the first variable x1. Okay. And d theta by dt is taken as x2. And the control action is going to be the anti-clockwise torque reaction, which the pendulum is going to give. That is going to be taken as the output. That is represented as u of t. Okay, this is the base for the pendulum, right? Now we are trying to make the pendulum stand in the reverse position. That is the thing. Okay. If theta is equal to 0, so theta is equal to 0 means what does it mean? The pendulum is in the vertical position itself. Then the shaft is in vertical position. If theta is positive, if the shaft is to the right of the vertical, and theta is negative if it is to the left of the vertical. Okay. So the vertical is the bench position for us, is the reference position for us. The instantaneous angular velocity del theta is approximated as the difference between the present angle measurement and the previous angle measurement. Now always it is compared with the previous position and then checked out. The control variable is u of t. This is the control variable u of t, which is the torque applied to the pole located at the tip of the pendulum in the anti-clockwise direction. It can be positive or negative depending on whether the pendulum falls to the left or right of the vertical. Okay. Now, see here, I told you two inputs we are taking, x1 and x2, theta and d theta. Okay. Now, for this, we are going to give the membership function. All right. And again, the output is nothing but the u of t, the torque, which is going to be in the anti-clockwise direction. For this also, we will be giving the variable, right? Now, first for x1 variable is nothing but theta. For theta, we are taking 5 membership functions: negative, negative medium, 0, positive medium, and positive. Okay. Now, in linear fuzzy control, what is happening? You are going to take the level as the 0 to 1 or minus 1 to 1. But in non-linear control, we can take any value depending upon the application, and then we can map it out between those intervals. Okay. Now see here for theta, I had taken the crisp value as the boundary, minus 3 to plus 3 as the boundary. All these are assumptions, purely assumptions. Okay. So for theta, minus 3 to plus 3, I am taking as the boundary value. So from minus 3 to plus 3, I am mapping all the membership functions. Okay, 5 membership functions I had taken. Same way, the second variable, x2. x2 variable, I am taking the boundary as minus 7 to 7. Again, 5 membership functions I had framed: negative, negative medium, 0, positive medium, and positive. Okay, so 5 for x1 and 5 for x2. So 5 into 5, 25 rules I have to give. I have not given the rule base here. It will follow the same thing what we have done for the above two examples. Okay. For the outputs here, output I have taken the crisp values as minus 28 to 28. So minus 28 to 28 is the boundary value what I give. Okay. And see here, the membership functions I have given is negative large, negative big, negative medium, negative small, 0, positive small, positive medium, positive big, positive large. Right? So all these membership functions have to be mapped in the 25 rules which we are going to give. Okay. Right. Now, x1 is the first variable, right? Now, x1, k plus 1, k is going to be the iteration values. This will be given based on the iteration values. So, x1 k plus 1 is equal to x1k plus x2k. So the both the two variables are going to be added. Now, if I take some 4-5 variables, all should be added together to get the first value. Okay. Next, x2k plus 1 is equal to x1k plus x2k minus uk. uk is nothing but the initial position what we are going to take. Okay. So likewise, the iteration will be updated and it goes on till the value what we are targeting is achieved. Okay. Now after this, you have to just put a FAM table and write the rules. Okay. You can of course take it as 3 cross 3 or 5 cross 5, however, whichever is comfortable. Okay. Next, this is with respect to fuzzy logic applications. Okay. Next, we'll proceed to special networks. Special networks in neural. Okay. First, we will start up with Kohanen self-organizing maps. So we are having SOM and special networks. SOM is nothing but self-organizing maps. Okay. Now, in self-organizing maps, this is, see, in the last session we saw about the clustering. So this is somewhat, Kohanen's SOM is somewhat similar to clustering. Okay. Now here we assume the topology. Okay. This network is also called as topology preserving maps. So this is the architecture, this is the input layer, and this is the output layer. Okay. Inputs and outputs are connected by weights. You know how we give the suffix, right? The inputs x1, xi, and xn. So I value runs from 1 to n. And the outputs are denoted by y, and the j value runs from 1 to m. Okay. So what we are trying to do is we are going to cluster the units. Now in this network, the weight vector will be compared. The weight vector will be compared with the input vector, and if it is similar, that will be selected as the winning neuron. Okay, and weight updation will occur for that particular winning neuron and the neighboring neurons also. Okay. So the self-organizing neural networks, also called topology preserving maps, assume a topological structure among the cluster units. There are m cluster units arranged in a 1 or 2 dimensional array. The input signals are n tuples. Okay. The weight vector for a cluster unit serves as an exemplar of the input patterns associated with that cluster. So what happens? The weight vector is compared here with the input vector. If it is similar, then it is selected as the winning neuron. Okay. Now, usually what happens in competitive learning, only the winning neuron will be updated, right? But here it is not like that. In SOM, in self-organized in Kohanen SOM, what happens? The winning neuron and the neighboring neuron, which is adjacent to the winning neuron, will be updated. During the self-organization process, the cluster unit whose weight vector matches the input pattern most closely is chosen as the winner. Okay. So the weight vector is compared here with the input vector. Okay. Now this winning unit and its neighboring units update their weights in terms of the topology of the cluster units. So this is done by clustering. Clustering, you know, we do generally by minimum Euclidean distance method. Okay. So Euclidean distance is calculated. So whichever distance is minimum, they are grouped into one clusters, right? For example, for a linear array of cluster units, so the array can be a linear array, rectangular array, or a hexagonal array, whatever shape it can be. Okay. But our aim is the updation of the winning neuron and the neighboring neurons, right? For example, for a linear array of cluster units, the neighborhood of radius R around cluster unit J consists of all units J such that maximum of 1 comma J minus R less than or equal to J less than or equal to minimum J plus R comma M. See, this statement is nothing but say if the 10th neuron is the winning neuron, then what happens? From the 5th neuron, the updation occurs, both the sides. So from 5th neuron to 15th neuron, the weight updation occurs. This is the case for linear array. Okay. Coming to a rectangular array, say, check here, This array is the rectangular array. Now in this rectangular array, if I give the radius as 2, now this dashed line represents the radius as 2, r is equal to 2. If this radius r is equal to 2, all the 25 nodes will be updated. Okay. And then next step what happens? The radius is reduced. So radius reduces means from 2 it comes to 1. So r is equal to 1 means this is the boundary. Right? So 9 nodes will be updated now. 9 nodes will belong to the winning neuron and the neighboring neurons. Having in concern this one, this ash is going to be the winning neuron. Okay. Then after updation, what occurs? The radius again decreases. The radius is reduced to 0 and the winning neuron is updated. This is for rectangular grid. If it is going to be a hexagonal grid, this is the hexagonal grid. In hexagonal grid, say if r is equal to 2, this is the outer boundary. R is equal to 2 means 19 nodes will be updated. Okay. Then r is reduced to 1. So r is reduced to 1 means 7 nodes is updated. Then r is equal to 0. Only the winning neuron is updated. Okay. This is how the case proceeds. So Cohen and SOM means you have to remember the neighborhood functions. Neighborhood parameters will be updated. Okay. Algorithm. This algorithm is very simple. You will measure the distance based on Euclidean distance method. Whichever is nearby will be clustered for weight updation. Okay. Initialize weight, set topological neighborhood parameters, set learning rate parameters. Learning rate parameter is going to be alpha. Okay. Step 1. While stopping condition is false, do steps 2 to 8. Step 2. For each input vector x, do steps 3 to 5. For each j, compute dj. Dj is going to be the distance is equal to summation of wij minus xi. Wij is going to be weight vector and xi is the input vector. Square of this will give the distance. Find index j such that d of j is minimum. So we are going to check the nearby data points. Okay. For all units j within a specified neighborhood of j and for all I, wij new is equal to, so for all I, the weight updation occurs. So new weight is equal to old weight plus change in weight. Change in weight is given by alpha. Alpha is the learning rate into input function minus the old weight. Okay. Update learning rate. Reduce radius of topological neighborhood at specified times. Test stopping condition. This is the algorithm. Okay. So r is equal to 2 is considered. Then r is equal to 1. R is equal to 0. So this radius can start from 10 or 50 or 100. However the algorithm tells. Okay. Next algorithm will go to learning vector quantization. This is called as LVQ algorithm. Now the previous one for clustering, right? In the clustering, we will be comparing the weight vector with the input vector, right? Now here in LVQ, what happens? The output quantity is given. Okay, this is similar to pattern classification. Okay, now the output quantity is always compared with the targeted value. Okay. Now learning vector quantization is a pattern classification method in which each output unit represents a particular class or category. During training, the output units are positioned by adjusting their weights through supervised training to approximate the decision surfaces of the theoretical base classifier. It is assumed that a set of training patterns with known classification is provided along with an initial distribution of preference vectors, each of which represents a known classification. So here the target itself is the output vector only. The output vector is previously trained with a set of training patterns. Okay, it can be a set of reference vectors. Okay, after training, an LVQ net classifies an input vector by assigning it to the same class as the output unit that as its weight vector closest to the input vector. Right now, this alone is classified and compared. Okay. Now, the architecture, if you see, it is the same as the Cohen and SOM. The same picture with the input vector, with the input vector, output vector, and they are adjoined by the weight vectors. Okay. Now, the algorithm, there will be some small changes. Initialize reference vectors while stopping condition is false. Do steps 2 to 6. For each training input vector X, do steps 3 to 4. Find J so that X minus Wj is minimum. So J is going to be the cluster. Xj minus Wj is going to be the distance what you are going to consider. Okay. Update Wj as follows. Now the considered target is equal to the the target and the cluster is compared. Okay, now this will be compared. If it is equal to also, it will be updated. If it is not equal also, it will be updated until the stopping condition is achieved. Okay, usually what happens if the target is obtained, we don't update the weight. But it is not like here. It is not the case here because T is going to be the targeted category, targeted cluster, and Cj is going to be the obtained cluster. So all this here we are talking in pattern classification based on clusters. So if it is equal also, we cannot get the data points very much accurate. So it will be updated till the stopping condition is achieved. Okay. Reduce learning rate. Test stopping condition. The condition may specify a fixed number of iteration or the learning rate reaching a sufficiently small value. Right? Now next. Next is probabilistic neural network. Probabilistic neural network. Now probabilistic neural network, we will be talking about the probability. Probability itself, you mean head or tail, right? So we go in for Bayesian theorem. As we went in fuzzy classification, same way we will be going in for probability. Probability means we will be going in for either two classes. So the input pattern should be clustered or should be given either into class A or class B. Okay, it can be classified either into any of the one classes. The probabilistic neural network is constructed using ideas from classical probability theory to form a neural network for pattern classification. The problem we consider is to classify the input vector into one of the two classes in a Bayesian optimal manner. So we have two choices. Okay. The Bayes decision rule states that an input vector should be classified as belonging to class A if HA, CA, FA of X is greater than HB, CB, FB of X. If this is greater, it will be given into class A. Otherwise into class B. Now what is this HA? HA is prior probability of occurrence. Is past experiences are studied on based on that we are going to classify. Okay. CA is going to be the cost associated with that. And FA is the probability density function. All this for class A and all this for class B. Okay. So whichever is greater, the input vector will be put into that category, either into class A or class B. Now this probability neural network is represented by a probability density function like this. The probability density function is represented as FA of X is equal to 1 by 2 pi power n by 2 sigma n, where n is the dimension of the input vector. Sigma is going to be the smoothing parameter for the Gaussian distribution. And MA is the number of training patterns in class A. For class B, it will be MB. Okay. And XAI is the ith training pattern from class A. Okay. So 1 by 2 by n power 2, n by 2, sigma power n, 1 by MA, summation of I is equal to 1 to MA, exponential of minus X minus XAI transpose into X minus XAI by 2 psi square. Okay. Now going to the architecture, in probabilistic neural network, we will have 4 layers. Okay. Input layer, pattern layer, summation layer, and the output layer. Now see the connections. All the input units will be connected to the pattern units. But from the pattern units, whichever classes they belong, only there it will be connected. See, ZA belongs to class A. So it will be connected only to FA. FA is going to be the probability density function of class A. Same way ZB1 to ZBK belong to class B. So it is connected to probability density function of class B. Okay. And this both is connected to the output unit. This is how it goes on. So here we have two algorithm, training algorithm and application algorithm. Training algorithm tells you how the unit is connected, and application algorithm gives you how it works. Okay. For each training input pattern, P is equal to 1 to P, do steps 2 to 3. Create pattern unit ZP. Weight vector for unit ZP. XP is given to be equal to WP. So unit ZP is either a ZA unit or a ZB unit. Connect pattern unit to summation unit. If XP belongs to class A, then connect pattern unit ZP to summation unit SA. Otherwise, connect pattern unit ZP to summation unit SP. Okay. This is the application algorithm which tells us how it works. Initialize weights. For each input pattern to be classified, do steps 2 to 4. Okay, so from input layer, we are coming to the pattern layer. Compute net input. Net input is nothing but, see, here we are going to compute the net input. Net input is nothing but this weight into the input vector. Okay. Next, after calculating the net input, compute output as Z. Z is equal to exponential of Zn minus 1 by sigma square. Okay, after this we go into summation units. Sum the inputs from pattern units to which they are connected. The summation unit for class B multiplies its total input by this expression. Okay, after that it is propagated to the output layer, and in the output layer the sum is calculated. Whichever is, if it is positive, it is put into class A. If it is not positive for class A, then it goes on to the class B. Okay, this is how the algorithm goes on. Next, cascade correlation. In cascade correlation, in addition to probabilistic neural network, cascade correlation is another network that builds its own architecture as training process. Okay, now in probabilistic neural network, we have only two cases. Either it can be grouped into class A or class B. Okay, but in cascade correlation, it is not like that. There's more advantages. But the other thing we have to look here is the network itself is somewhat complicated as compared with the previous one. Okay, but it overcomes the drawbacks of backpropagation networks also, like slow rate conversion and fixing of network architecture throughout the learning. So the network architecture itself can be changed for cascade correlation. Okay, so if you see here, it has this is the input unit, input layer, and this is the output unit. I'll just give you a clear idea. We have the hidden layer in between the input and the output. The procedure here is you can add how many ever hidden network you need. Okay. Now we have some steps for adding the hidden layer or the hidden neuron. Okay. First, one hidden layer is added. Okay. This hidden layer is connected only with the input layer initially. Okay, the weights are checked. If the weights are propagated properly, then it is put into the network, and then the weights are freezed. Okay, the weights between the input layer and the hidden layer is freezed. It cannot be changed. Okay, but the weight between the hidden layer and the output layer is subject to changes. Okay, so it can be adjusted depending upon the error or depending upon the output, whatever you get it. Right? So this is the procedure. You can add how many ever hidden layer is required there. Okay. Now see here, U is the weight connection between the input unit and the hidden unit. Okay. And T is the weight connection between the hidden neurons. And V is the weight connection between the hidden layer and the output layer. Okay. The suffixes you know how we give with respect to the number of the neurons. Okay. A cascade correlation net consists of input units, hidden units, and output units. Input units are connected directly to output units with adjustable connections. Connections from inputs to hidden units are trained when the hidden unit is added to net and are then frozen. Connections from the hidden unit to the output units are adjustable. Cascade correlation starts with a minimal network consisting only of the required input and output units. This network is trained until no further improvement is obtained. The error for each output unit is then computed. Okay. Next, one hidden unit is added to the network in a two-step process. During the first step, the candidate unit is connected to each of the input units, but is not connected to the output unit. The weights on the connection of the input unit to the candidate unit are adjusted to maximize the correlation between the candidate's output and the residual error at the output units. So once this is done, the weight is freezed. It cannot change. Okay, the second step in which the new unit is added to the net. Now, the new hidden unit is connected to the output units, the weights on the layer being adjusted. Now, all connections to the output units are trained. The connections from the input units are trained again, and the new connections from the hidden unit are trained for the first time. So, like that, it goes on. Coming to the algorithm. So, whatever I explained you will come in the algorithm. Students, stay back just 5 minutes. I'll just complete the class. Okay. The algorithm for cascade correlation is as follows. First step, start with the required input and output units. Train the net until the error reaches a minimum. If the error is acceptably small, stop. If not, compute for each training pattern and proceed to step 2. Add first hidden unit. A candidate unit hazard is connected to each input. So candidate unit is nothing but the hidden unit. Okay. So first it is connected only to the input unit. Initialize weights from input unit to Z by small random values. Okay. Train these weights to maximize C. When the weights stop changing, they are frozen. Train all weights V to the output units. If acceptable error or maximum number of units has been reached, stop. Else proceed to step 5. While stopping condition is false, do steps 6 and 7. Okay. Next, a candidate unit Z is connected to each input unit and each previously added hidden unit. Train these weights to maximize C. Okay, C is nothing but the targeted value, whatever we require. When these weights stop changing, they are frozen. Train all the weights V to the output units. If acceptable error or maximum number of units has been reached, stop, else continue. Okay. Next, general regression neural network. General regression neural network is a single pass network. This is purely based on regression. Okay, it can be used for regression, prediction, classification. For all dynamical systems, it is used. Okay, many systems are used for steady state operating systems in steady state, but here we can use general regression neural network for dynamical systems also. Okay, and this follows GRNN represents an improved technique in the neural networks based on the non-parametric regression. Okay. GRNN consists of input, hidden, summation, and division layers. So this is the architecture: input layer, hidden layer, summation layer, and the outer layer. So here, all the input nodes will be connected to hidden nodes. Okay, and the hidden nodes will be connected to summation layer, and the summation layer will be connected to output layer. Okay. So the algorithm is there. I will post it in the Google Classroom. Just go through it. This algorithm is very simple. We are going to measure the distance, okay, based on the cluster center. So correct network center, recalculate the Euclidean distance pointer, correct the learning rate. So as we saw in the clustering, same way. First, we are initializing the cluster center, calculating the Euclidean distance of the step K, and choose the point of minimum. Then after calculating the Euclidean distance, correct the network center. After that, calculating the Euclidean distance, correcting the learning rate, again the process will be repeated. This is same as clustering. Okay. These are some advantages. Please go through it. The last one is cognitron. Cognitron is just a hypothetical mathematical model of human. Okay. It consists of two set of neurons, presynaptic neuron and postsynaptic neurons. These are the presynaptic neurons and these are the postsynaptic neurons. Also, we have inhibitory neurons and excitatory neurons. Okay, excitatory neurons help in the excitation of the postsynaptic neurons. Okay, and inhibitory neurons stops it. Always there is an opposite reaction. So these inhibitory neurons always exit the postsynaptic neurons. Okay, so this is a simple algorithm. We don't have the algorithm, we have just the steps. It is being posted here. I'll post this PPT in the Google Classroom. Just have a look at it and do submit your assignments in time. Thank you, students, for joining today. Thank you.